The stars above the Lumerian galaxy sparkled like scattered diamonds, their light painting the corridors of the Galactic court in shimmering colors. Captain Elias Reed adjusted the strap of his uniform as he stepped onto the landing platform. The human starship that had carried him across countless light years gleamed behind him, but here, among the alien spires and floating gardens of the court, it felt small. He was the first human to arrive for an arranged union with the Princess Empress Lyra, a marriage meant to strengthen ties between Earth and the ruling galaxy. Yet already he could feel the eyes of 1,000 alien nobles upon him, curious, disdainful, and in some cases openly mocking. Elias was used to pressure. He had commanded starships, negotiated tense trade deals, and faced hostile environments. But nothing had prepared him for the silent scrutiny of species who considered humans little more than primitive creatures. His boots made soft sounds on the polished crystal floor as attendants led him toward the throne hall. Each step echoed in the vast hall, amplifying his awareness that every noble here judged his very presence. He could feel whispers sliding through the air, the rustling of alien robes and the clicking of mandibles. They did not understand him. They did not respect him. And yet Elias moved with calm, steady confidence. Humans thrived in uncertainty, in challenges that seemed impossible, and this, he thought, was no different. The hall was immense. Towers of translucent crystal spiraled toward the high ceiling, where light refracted into endless rainbows. Hovering platforms carried couriers and attendants, gliding above the intricate mosaic floor. At the far end, the throne itself seemed carved from a single giant star crystal, glowing softly with internal light. And upon it sat Princess Empress Lyra, her presence commanding even without the throne. Her skin shimmered with the faint glow of bioluminescence, her eyes deep pools of violet intelligence, and her posture radiated confidence, the kind that made others feel small. A soft murmur rippled through the crowd as she noticed Elias stepping forward. "Ah," Lyra said, her voice smooth as liquid metal. "So the humans finally send someone brave enough to walk into our court." Her tone was mocking, tinged with amusement. She tilted her head slightly, as if studying a curious animal. Or perhaps foolish enough. "Which is it?" The courtiers giggled, and Elias could see some of the minor nobles openly smirking. Elias bowed slightly, the human way of showing respect without fear. "I am Captain Elias Reed, representative of Earth," he said evenly. "I come to honor the agreement between our worlds. I have heard tales of your adaptability, your stubbornness. Perhaps you are not entirely as simple as the legends claim. But tell me, Captain, can you survive our court without breaking?" That calm was itself a statement. He did not flinch under her gaze, did not allow himself to be intimidated by her reputation or the weight of the court's scorn. In that moment, a silence fell over the hall, the courtiers suddenly aware that this human refused to be small. Lyra laughed softly, a melodic sound that carried across the room. "Bold. I like bold." Yet boldness does not always survive in the face of tradition. We shall see how you fare. Failure could humiliate him, or worse, humiliate his species. The first trial was deceptively simple, a test of observation and etiquette. Elias had to navigate a maze of floating platforms, each carrying an alien noble who offered cryptic riddles and gestures. A wrong step, a misread sign, and the court would see it as a failure. The platforms glided slowly, giving him time to plan, but the courtiers whispered and laughed at each hesitation. Elias observed quietly. He noticed that many of the aliens relied on gestures and sequences they assumed were obvious. They expected him to interpret everything by their strict rules. Humans, however, thrived on adaptability. Instead of mimicking, he watched, calculated, and chose paths that seemed unconventional to the court. A few steps, a tilt of the hand, a calm nod in response to a riddle, and he crossed the first platform successfully. The whispers turned from mockery to incredulous murmurs. Princess Lyra's violet eyes followed him, her smile hidden but her interest clearly piqued. She leaned forward slightly, her glowing fingers resting lightly on the throne arm. Elias could feel her judgment as keen as a blade. "Interesting," she murmured to herself. The second trial was a test of strategy. Elias faced holographic simulations of alien disputes, each designed to confuse and trap the participant. Other nobles had tried and failed spectacularly, their solutions overly complicated, their minds trapped by tradition. Elias, however, approached the simulations like he would any challenge on a human starship. He observed patterns, identified inconsistencies, and acted decisively. He solved problems in ways that surprised the court, earning narrow, begrudging nods from some alien elders. By now, Lyra's initial mockery had shifted. She no longer saw only a primitive human to laugh at. Instead, she saw someone capable, someone whose mind worked differently, humanly, creatively. Yet she masked her reaction with a light laugh, as if teasing him rather than admiring him. "You are clever," she said, her tone playful yet pointed. "But cleverness alone does not make a suitable consort. Let us see if you can manage grace and diplomacy. That is where most humans falter." Ilias, however, relied on his natural human empathy and observation skills. He listened carefully, repeated tones, mirrored gestures, and found ways to bridge gaps that the aliens themselves had not considered. By the end, he had managed conversations with success that astonished even the judges. As the trials concluded, a murmur of excitement spread through the court. A human, long thought incapable of matching alien intelligence and refinement, had performed admirably. The courtiers exchanged glances, some shocked, others reluctantly impressed. And though she did not show it fully, Princess Lyra's gaze lingered on him with a new intensity. Yet Ilias knew the day was only beginning. He had survived the trials, yes, but the court had many more eyes than just the visible ones. Whispers had begun among the highest-ranking aliens of the Galactic observation, a secret council that assessed not only rulers, but those who sought their approval. They watched for courage, judgment, and integrity, qualities humans often claimed but rarely demonstrated in the galactic arena. Ilias did not fear them. He understood humans had something alien species sometimes lacked: resilience under pressure, adaptability in uncertainty, and the courage to do what was right even when misunderstood. These qualities had guided him through war zones, corporate negotiations, and crises that could have destroyed entire fleets. Here in the glittering court of the Lemurian galaxy, they would be tested again. As the sun of a nearby star reflected off the crystalline towers outside, Ilias allowed himself a small, private smile. He had arrived as a human among the stars, mocked, underestimated, and scrutinized. But he would not leave as a failure. Humans never did. They adapted, endured, and often thrived when others expected them to crumble. And perhaps, just perhaps, the Princess Empress would discover that her laughter could not diminish what humans carried within: courage, ingenuity, and an unyielding sense of honor. The first day had ended with formal bows and polite farewells, but Ilias' mind raced ahead. Trials were just the beginning. Mockery could sting, but it could also be an opportunity to prove worth where others doubted it. And as he looked toward the glowing throne where Lyra sat, Ilias made a silent promise. He would earn her respect, not by force or arrogance, but through every choice, every action, and every human quality that had carried his species across the stars. He stepped into his quarters for the night, the hum of alien engines and distant cosmic winds filling the halls. Sleep would come later. For now, he reviewed every detail of the court, every subtle sign of the aliens' expectations and weaknesses. Humans thrived not by following rules blindly, but by understanding them, then finding ways to navigate the impossible. And so, as the stars continued their silent vigil over the Lemurian galaxy, Captain Ilias Reed, human envoy and soon-to-be groom, prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. He did not yet know how the Princess Empress would react to the next day, or how the secret eyes of the galactic observation would measure him. But one thing was certain: humanity had arrived, underestimated, but far from defeated. The story of a human among the stars was only beginning, and no amount of mockery could erase what humans carried in their hearts. The next morning, the galactic court was alive with an energy that only the first day of new arrivals could bring. Crystal corridors shimmered with soft light as aliens of every shape and size moved gracefully, conversing in tones, clicks, and hums that Ilias had yet to fully understand. Today, he would face the second phase of the trials. Unlike yesterday, where observation and simple etiquette were tested, today's challenges were designed to push him to the edge: strategy, quick thinking, and adaptability under pressure. Ilias adjusted his uniform as he entered the trial chamber. The room was enormous, circular, and floating platforms rotated slowly above the central floor. Holographic projections of alien cities and fleets danced in the air, accompanied by strange symbols and shifting lights. Courtiers lined the edges, hovering or perched on platforms, their expressions a mix of curiosity and barely concealed amusement. Ilias could feel their eyes on him, ready to see him falter. Princess Empress Lyra was already seated on a raised platform at the far end, her glowing fingers resting lightly on the arm of her throne. She leaned forward slightly, her violet eyes scanning him with a mixture of amusement and calculation. "Captain Reed," she said, her voice smooth and teasing, "today we shall see whether your human mind can keep pace with the galaxy, or whether it will crumble like a fragile crystal." She laughed softly, and the laughter of the court followed. Elias bowed slightly, maintaining his calm. "I will do my best, Your Majesty." He spoke not only to her, but to the entire court. He did not shrink under their gaze. Humans were small in appearance compared to many alien species, but humans had survived worse odds than this. The first challenge of the day was a strategic simulation. Holographic displays projected entire planetary systems, fleets, and supply lines. Elias was to plan a defense against an imaginary invasion of multiple planets by a coalition of alien warlords. Other participants, mostly alien nobles, had already attempted the simulation. Many were proud of their intelligence, relying on complex calculations and rigid strategies. They had failed. Their solutions collapsed under minor adjustments, revealing overconfidence and lack of flexibility. Elias observed quietly. The aliens assumed that brute force, overwhelming numbers, and intricate formulas would lead to victory. Humans, however, thrived on unpredictability, adaptability, and understanding the motives of others. He took a deep breath and examined the simulated scenario. Instead of deploying forces to match the aliens' expectations, he chose unconventional positions, relying on speed, coordination, and misdirection. The court murmured as he moved pieces that seemed weak, scattered, even chaotic. Some whispered openly, mocking him. "A human has no understanding of strategy," one elder hissed. "Watch him fail." But when the simulation ran, Elias' unconventional plan succeeded. The invading fleets were delayed, critical planets were protected, and resources were saved. Even the judges raised their antennae in surprise. Lyra's expression shifted. The amusement in her eyes softened into curiosity. "Clever," she murmured, almost to herself. "Too clever for my taste, perhaps." Elias was expected to mediate, resolve disputes, and maintain balance without favoring any side. The other participants had panicked here, overwhelmed by the layers of cultural rules, gestures, and tonal subtleties. Many had insulted an ambassador inadvertently, earning points deducted and scorn from the court. Elias studied each species, listening carefully. Humans excelled not by rote imitation, but by observation and empathy. He noticed subtle patterns. The flick of a tail meant impatience, the pitch of a hum indicated frustration, the tilt of a head showed concession. Using these cues, he navigated the negotiations, speaking in calm, deliberate tones. He resolved disputes with creative compromises, turning potential confrontations into mutual agreements. By the end of the diplomatic trial, murmurs of astonishment spread across the court. Aliens who had expected to ridicule him were forced to acknowledge his skill. One elder whispered, "He does not follow our rules, yet he succeeds." Elias, despite the attention, did not let pride interfere. He was aware that the court's laughter yesterday had been shallow, and that today's amazement might quickly turn back into scorn. The final trial of the day tested physical coordination in zero gravity. Participants were to navigate a chamber filled with floating platforms, spinning obstacles, and shifting gravitational fields. Humans were not naturally suited for zero-gravity maneuvers, and many had struggled to maintain balance, falling awkwardly into traps. Elias had trained in artificial gravity and maneuvering in space suits, but this trial was far more unpredictable. He studied the field. Aliens relied on predicting movement according to precise laws of physics. Elias relied on intuition and quick reactions. Instead of planning every step in advance, he adjusted constantly, responding to each shift with immediate corrections. When a platform tilted unexpectedly, he swung his legs and grabbed a handhold with perfect timing. When an obstacle rotated unpredictably, he twisted midair to avoid collision. The court gasped as he moved gracefully despite the chaotic environment. Princess Lyra leaned forward, visibly intrigued. "Remarkable," she said softly. "He is not merely lucky, he adapts. A human with such instinct is unusual." Her tone held both admiration and disbelief. The laughter she had shared with the court the day before was gone, replaced with a subtle tension. When the trials concluded, Elias stood at the center of the room, breathing steadily. His body was tired, but his mind was alert, analyzing every reaction from the court. He had survived not because he followed expectations, but because he thought differently, as humans often did. Aliens who prided themselves on perfection and control had underestimated him at every turn. The court erupted into discussions. Some whispered about his successes in hushed tones, while others openly praised him, albeit with cautious skepticism. It was clear that the narrative of humans as weak and unrefined was starting to fracture, at least in some minds. Lyra's gaze remained fixed on him, and for the first time she removed her mask of amusement. Her eyes studied him as if trying to see the core of the human mind. "You survive where others falter," she said. "Yet tell me, Captain Reed, is this mere instinct or is it willpower? Can humans endure when all else is against them?" The simple truth of his words carried a weight that resonated beyond species. Many had expected arrogance, bluster, or fear. Instead, they saw calm confidence and quiet determination. After the trials, Elias was escorted back to his quarters. He walked slowly, observing the alien architecture and subtle symbols that decorated the corridors. Even in moments of solitude, he studied the environment, noting patterns and potential hazards. Humans had always learned to anticipate danger and opportunity, and he intended to apply the same careful observation here. A soft chime announced a message at his door. An attendant delivered a small holographic note from Lyra herself. He activated it and found a brief, elegantly worded message. Humans thrived under such tests, not because they were invulnerable, but because they were resilient. Later that evening, in the quiet of his quarters, Elias reviewed the day's events. Every whisper of the court, every gesture, every tone could be a clue to future challenges. Humans had survived countless wars, crises, and disasters precisely because they learned quickly, adapted faster, and refused to be defeated by fear or scorn. Here, in the heart of the galaxy, the same qualities would serve him well. As the Lumerian sun set, casting long beams of golden light across the floating towers, Elias reflected on the subtle shifts he had noticed. Princess Lyra's demeanor was changing. The mockery of the court, once sharp and relentless, had begun to falter in the face of human ingenuity. Even the judges and elders, usually stern and inflexible, had shown signs of surprise and respect. Humans were outsiders here, small and underestimated. Yet humans had something rare in the galaxy: the courage to face the unknown, the creativity to find solutions where others saw only obstacles, and the moral clarity to act with integrity even when mocked or belittled. Elias knew that the trials were far from over, that greater challenges awaited, but he also knew that he had begun to change the perception of humans in this court. And perhaps in doing so, he was also beginning to change the Princess Empress. The day had been long, exhausting, and filled with judgment and scrutiny, but Elias felt a quiet satisfaction. Each trial had been an opportunity, each mockery a test of patience and resolve. Humans thrived not in comfort, but in challenge. That was the essence of their strength. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new eyes watching, and new opportunities to prove that humans were more than what the galaxy expected. But tonight, as stars shimmered beyond the crystal walls and the alien courtiers settled into their chambers, Captain Elias Reed allowed himself a rare moment of calm. He had survived the mockery, endured the trials, and begun to show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. And the story of a human groom among the stars was only just beginning. The morning light filtered through the crystal towers of the Galactic court, casting prismatic colors across the corridors. The court was alive with movement and sound, though today there was a tension beneath the usual pomp. Whispers fluttered through the halls, more urgent than the polite murmur of yesterday. Captain Elias Reed, walking steadily toward the central chamber, noticed the change immediately. Something was amiss. As he entered the grand hall, a wave of commotion met him. Courtiers scurried across platforms, attendants hovered frantically, and the soft hum of energy fields flickered inconsistently. At the far end, Princess Empress Lyra sat on her throne, her violet eyes wide with concern. Unlike the teasing amusement of days past, there was a sharp edge in her gaze. "What has happened?" Elias asked calmly, approaching the throne. "The central energy core of the court," Lyra replied, her voice tight. "It has been sabotaged. If it fails completely, the palace could lose power across all sectors. Entire floating platforms could collapse and we could face injuries, or worse." The court, for all its grandeur, was vulnerable in ways the aliens themselves had not anticipated. The sabotage was precise, targeting weaknesses only someone who understood the energy system's intricacies could exploit. "Show me the core," he said. Attendants gestured toward a chamber suspended above the main floor. Platforms rotated, giving access to the complex web of conduits, holographic displays, and glowing crystal energy nodes. "We need to stabilize it immediately." Our engineers are struggling to contain the problem. The court engineers were tense, making adjustments according to established procedures, but each move seemed to worsen the situation. Stop following the protocols blindly, Elias instructed, his tone firm but calm. Assess the immediate threat, prioritize containment, and adapt to the system as it reacts. Predict the unexpected, not just follow the charts. He noticed patterns in the system's reactions, feedback loops that the alien engineers had not considered. With each corrective action, the stability improved. Princess Lyra watched intently. Her usual expression of amusement was gone, replaced by a mixture of disbelief and fascination. This human, whom she had mocked, was taking charge calmly while seasoned court engineers struggled to keep up. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the soft hum of the energy core. Elias moved with purpose, checking nodes, issuing precise instructions, and predicting the cascading effects of each change. The court's floating platforms shuddered slightly, but under his guidance they held. Courtiers who had been ready to panic now observed in awe, whispering about his skill and composure. One of the engineers, a four-armed Lumerian with pale green skin, finally spoke. "Captain Reed, I do not understand. How are you seeing what we cannot? Our protocols are perfect, yet you improvise, and it works. Watch and learn." Whoever had attempted it could not have expected a human to handle it with such calm precision. Princess Lyra rose from her throne, stepping forward as the crowd parted. "Captain Reed," she said, her voice carrying through the chamber, "you have handled a situation that would have tested even the most experienced of our engineers. Your composure and intellect are impressive." Even the courtiers whispered in hushed tones. A human had just demonstrated not only survival under pressure, but superiority in a crisis. Some murmured that the human envoy might be more than just a symbol of Earth's presence. After the crisis, Elias was escorted to a private chamber where Lyra awaited. She was no longer playful. Her gaze was serious, assessing him with newfound respect. "Captain," she said, "you have shown ingenuity and courage, but tell me what motivates you. Is this instinct, training, or something else? And we act with integrity because our choices define us, not just the outcome." Elias answered with calm humility, refusing to let pride cloud his interactions. He understood that respect earned in action, not in words, carried the greatest weight. Later, during a private meeting with the Princess Empress, she allowed a small smile. "Captain Reed, I admit you have surprised me. You handle challenges with remarkable poise. I wonder if other humans are like you. You defy expectations." Humans thrived under pressure because they remained flexible, thoughtful, and courageous. These qualities were visible in every decision he had made, and now the court, including the Princess Empress, had witnessed them firsthand. He knew that his actions had begun to shift perceptions, though subtlety mattered. Open praise from some nobles was encouraging, but he also sensed envy and lingering doubt. Humanity was still a new presence in the galaxy, and any sign of weakness could undo the progress he had made. He would need to remain vigilant, thoughtful, and ready for whatever challenge came next. As he prepared for the next day, Elias allowed himself a quiet moment of satisfaction. He had survived a crisis that could have devastated the court. He had demonstrated that humans were not only capable, but often superior in unexpected ways. And he had begun to earn the respect of the Princess Empress herself, a rare and valuable acknowledgement in this galaxy. The stars outside shimmered gently, reflecting off the crystal towers of the court. For the first time since his arrival, Elias felt that the mockery of the first days had given way to something more important, recognition of what humans could truly achieve when underestimated. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, undoubtedly, but Elias was ready. Humans had always faced adversity, and humans had always found ways to survive and to thrive. Here, in the heart of the Lumerian galaxy, that same spirit would continue to guide him. And perhaps, just perhaps, it would also guide the Princess Empress to see humans not as inferior, but as worthy allies, and something more. The morning air in the Galactic court shimmered with unusual energy, carrying whispers that spread quickly through the corridors. Captain Elias Reed had learned to ignore much of the gossip, but today's murmurs carried a weight that he could not overlook. Rumors spoke of the Galactic Observers, a secret council that watched rulers, envoys, and those aspiring to leadership across the stars. They were said to appear without warning, judging integrity, intelligence, courage, and diplomacy, and their decisions could elevate or humble any being in the galaxy. Elias paused for a moment in the central hall, observing the delicate balance of floating platforms and crystalline towers. The court was unusually tense. Even minor nobles who had previously dismissed him as a primitive human moved with careful attention, their gestures subdued. Princess Empress Lyra sat on her throne, her violet eyes sharp and focused, as if she too felt the weight of something imminent. "They are here," she said softly, though her tone carried to him across the room. "The observers have arrived." A subtle hum filled the air, barely noticeable at first, like the faint vibration of a distant star. Then, a series of glowing forms materialized above the central chamber, shifting and refracting light in ways that made the entire room feel unreal. The galactic observers were unlike any being Elias had ever seen. They were translucent, multi-limbed, their forms flowing and shifting, impossible to categorize, yet their presence commanded immediate attention. Silence fell over the court, and all eyes turned toward the floating figures. One of the observers' voices echoed in the chamber, not in words, but in thought, clear, precise, and resonant. "We have observed this court. We have observed the human envoy. We will now assess worthiness, courage, and judgment." He had survived every test thus far by remaining steady, analyzing his surroundings, and acting decisively. This would be no different. The first test of the observers was subtle. A hidden disturbance in the court's energy flow caused floating platforms to tilt unpredictably. Courtiers struggled to maintain balance, while some minor nobles panicked at the slightest shift. Elias noticed the pattern immediately. He moved to the nearest unstable platform, adjusting his stance and extending support to nearby courtiers. His calm action steadied the platform, and others followed his lead. Lyra watched him closely, her expression unreadable. "He acts without hesitation. He adapts where others panic," she murmured to herself. Next, the observers created a simulation, projecting holographic crises across the court. A sudden energy surge threatening multiple platforms, minor disputes among alien delegates, and a critical breach in communication networks. The court's reaction was chaotic. Many alien nobles hesitated, unsure how to respond. Some blamed each other, while others followed rigid procedures that worsened the situation. Elias stepped forward. "Prioritize stability first," he instructed, speaking clearly. "Then address disputes calmly, observe, adapt, and act decisively." His voice carried authority without arrogance. Using a combination of reasoning, observation, and quick improvisation, he coordinated responses across the court. Energy flows were stabilized, minor disputes resolved, and communication restored. The observers' forms shimmered and pulsed. "Adaptation, composure, leadership under pressure, traits observed," they intoned. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. She had expected mockery and human error, yet here was a human orchestrating the court's recovery flawlessly. The nobles who had once laughed at him now moved with respect, deferring to his guidance. The observers' next test was more personal, designed to probe ethical judgment. Holographic scenarios presented choices where action could benefit oneself but harm others, or sacrifice advantage for the greater good. Most participants hesitated, calculating outcomes and weighing gain. Elias considered each scenario with care, choosing consistently the path that protected lives, upheld fairness, and demonstrated integrity. "Integrity, courage, and moral judgment observed," the observers said. Lyra's expression softened, though her pride remained. "A human who not only survives but acts rightly under pressure," she murmured. She leaned forward slightly, her violet eyes fixed on Elias. "Perhaps I underestimated you." They had watched humans mocked for generations, dismissed as weak and unrefined. Yet here was a single human proving that courage, ingenuity, and moral strength could surpass expectations in ways they had never imagined. The final assessment by the observers combined all previous tests. A simulated threat emerged across multiple sectors of the court, involving energy disruptions, social conflicts, and moral dilemmas simultaneously. Most participants froze, overwhelmed by the complexity. Elias moved methodically, applying lessons from each prior challenge. He coordinated energy stabilization, mediated disputes, and made ethical decisions, often improvising solutions that aliens would not consider. The observers' forms brightened, their voices resonating through the chamber. "This human envoy exhibits qualities of leadership, courage, ingenuity, and moral clarity. Worthiness is established." The nobles looked to one another, realizing that the observers' judgment was clear. The human who had arrived only days ago, mocked openly by some and underestimated by all, had passed the ultimate test with distinction. Lyra rose from her throne, walking toward Elias. For the first time, she spoke without sarcasm or amusement. "Captain Reed, the observers have judged your actions. You have not only survived their scrutiny, but you have exceeded expectations at every turn. Tell me, how do you do this?" Humans survive by learning, adjusting, and doing what is right even when others doubt us. The laughter and mockery of the past days had been replaced by respect. Aliens who had once whispered of human inferiority now spoke cautiously, acknowledging his skill and composure. The narrative of humans as weak and unworthy was unraveling, thread by thread. Lyra spoke again, her voice now carrying authority tempered with admiration. "Captain Reed, you have demonstrated what few in this court could hope to achieve. You have earned not only my respect, but the respect of this entire assembly. I only wish to serve with the abilities I have, for the good of the court, the galaxy, and the alliance between our worlds." Human envoy recognized. "I mocked you, underestimated you, and assumed you would fail. But you have proven that humans are capable, courageous, and wise beyond what many in this court believe. I respect you." Pride and amusement gave way to something more profound, acknowledgement of worth. She had witnessed firsthand the human spirit in action, and it was undeniable. Word of the observers' assessment spread quickly. Across the court, aliens who had doubted humans began to change their tone. Even those who remained skeptical now treated Elias with a caution born of newfound respect. Humanity's reputation, long underestimated in this galaxy, had taken a significant step forward. Elias, however, remained steady. He did not allow himself to be carried away by praise. Humans thrived not on vanity, but on continued effort and integrity. The trials would continue, challenges would come, and alliances would be tested. But today had proven that humans could hold their own in even the most complex and intimidating circumstances. As the day ended, Elias walked through the court gardens, observing the floating streams of light and crystal flowers swaying in artificial breezes. The stars above reflected off the crystal towers, a reminder of the vast galaxy beyond. He thought of Earth, of the humans who had survived and adapted over millennia, and of the qualities that had carried them across the cosmos. And now, he reflected, those same qualities had earned respect here, in the heart of the Lemurian galaxy, before alien nobles, before a skeptical princess, and even before the secretive eyes of the galactic observers. For the first time, Elias felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. He had not only survived the court's scrutiny and mockery, but had begun to reshape perceptions. Humans were no longer the underestimated outsiders. They were recognized as capable, courageous, and morally sound. Princess Empress Lyra watched him from her throne, her violet eyes thoughtful. The teasing and mockery were gone. In their place was something new, genuine respect, curiosity, and perhaps the first spark of trust. Elias knew the journey was far from over. The final phase of his introduction to the court was yet to come. But he had demonstrated what humans always carried within them, the ability to adapt, to endure, and to thrive in the face of doubt and adversity. And in that moment, amid the shimmering towers and whispering lights of the galactic court, Captain Elias Reed realized something profound. Sometimes, it took the observation of the galaxy itself to show the true value of humanity. He walked on, steady, confident, and ready for whatever trials remained, knowing that the respect he had earned today was not the end, but the beginning. The final day of Elias Reed's introduction to the galactic court dawned bright and clear, the floating towers of crystal reflecting the light of a nearby star. The court was unusually quiet for the morning, the courtiers still murmuring about the extraordinary events of the previous days. Word of Elias' calm handling of the sabotage and his successful navigation of the observers, trials had spread far and wide. Aliens who had once mocked humans now viewed him with respect, and the Princess Empress herself seemed caught between curiosity and admiration. Elias walked through the central hall, his posture calm and measured, yet his mind was alert. Today would be the final test, though he did not know in what form it would take. The court had a tradition. The final assessment was rarely formal. It could appear as a challenge, a ceremony, or even a subtle social trial. The key was to demonstrate composure, skill, and character in an unpredictable situation. Humans thrived in uncertainty, and Elias was ready. As he entered the throne chamber, Princess Lyra rose from her platform. Unlike before, there was no amusement in her gaze, only seriousness tempered with interest. "Captain Reed," she said, her voice clear and resonant, "you have faced our trials, our mockery, and even the scrutiny of the galactic observers. Today, the court wishes to see not only your skill but your judgment in matters of alliance and diplomacy. A final demonstration, if you will." "I understand, Your Majesty." Most participants would hesitate, overthinking each choice, paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong decision. Elias studied the projections carefully. His human instinct was to find balance and fairness, to consider both immediate and long-term consequences. Unlike many alien species, who relied on rigid rules or hierarchical thinking, he assessed each situation with logic, empathy, and adaptability. He proposed solutions that were not only effective but equitable, ensuring that no party felt slighted while maintaining the security and stability of the galaxy. Lyra watched him silently, her expression thoughtful. She had expected arrogance, mistakes, or hesitation, but saw none. Elias was calm, decisive, and principled, qualities that were rare among the rulers and envoys of the galaxy. The court was impressed. Nobles who had doubted him whispered to one another in hushed tones, marveling at how a single human could navigate these complexities with such precision. Some began to nod, acknowledging the ingenuity and judgment of the human envoy. Then came the unexpected challenge. A sudden energy fluctuation caused the holographic displays to flicker and distort, simulating a crisis across multiple sectors. Aliens would have panicked, frozen, or relied strictly on protocol. Elias, however, remained composed. He quickly assessed the problem, adjusted the projections, and provided instructions to stabilize the system. His calm decisiveness prevented the simulated crisis from escalating, demonstrating once more that humans could act effectively under pressure. Lyra's expression softened further. "Captain Reed," she said, stepping closer, "you have shown skill, courage, and integrity at every step. Most humans would have faltered under this pressure, yet you have thrived." The narrative of humans as weak and unrefined had been completely overturned. Lyra turned to the court, her voice rising so all could hear. "Nobles of the Lumerian galaxy, I admit I was wrong. I mocked this human, underestimated him, and assumed he would fail. But Captain Elias Reed has proven us all wrong. His courage, intellect, and moral judgment are unmatched, even by the standards of this court." A senior noble approached Elias, his multiple eyes bright with curiosity. "Human," he said, "I admit I doubted you, but your performance has changed my mind. You are not only capable, but wise beyond what I expected. The galaxy will benefit from your presence." Lyra stepped forward once more. "Captain Reed, as Princess Empress, I officially recognize your contributions and achievements. Your presence here strengthens not only the alliance between our worlds, but also the respect for humans across this galaxy. Today, you are no longer underestimated. Today, you are acknowledged as an equal, and perhaps as something greater." Yet recognition from the court, from the Empress, and even from the observers was a testament to the qualities that had carried his species across countless challenges. The court erupted in applause. The floating platforms shimmered with the reflected light of the crystal towers, and nobles whispered about the remarkable human who had changed perceptions forever. Even those who had once mocked him now spoke with careful respect, acknowledging his skill, judgment, and courage. Lyra looked directly at Elias. "I must admit," she said softly, almost to herself, "you have not only earned respect but admiration. I underestimated humans, but you have shown what is possible when courage, ingenuity, and integrity guide action. Perhaps there is more to your species than I realized. Perhaps the galaxy itself needed to observe, as we did, to understand your worth. You have proven that humans are capable of more than we imagined." The nobles who had once ridiculed humans now bowed in acknowledgement, recognizing the achievements of someone they had previously dismissed. As the ceremony concluded, Elias reflected on the journey. He had arrived as a human outsider, mocked and underestimated. Through composure, ingenuity, and ethical action, he had earned not only respect but admiration from a court that had doubted him at every step. Humans, he realized, were strongest not because of size, strength, or technology alone, but because of the combination of courage, intelligence, adaptability, and moral clarity. Lyra approached him privately as the courtiers dispersed. "Captain Reed," she said, her tone sincere, "I misjudged you. Not only are you capable, but you have also shown the heart of a leader. I respect you, and I look forward to seeing what humanity can offer this galaxy." I will continue to serve with these qualities for the benefit of both our worlds. The court gradually returned to normal, but something had changed. Humans were no longer outsiders or curiosities. They were recognized as capable, wise, and principled. Elias' actions had shifted the perception of an entire galaxy, demonstrating that courage and integrity transcended species. As the sun set, casting golden reflections across the floating platforms and crystal towers, Elias walked through the gardens of the court. He felt a quiet pride, not in personal glory, but in the affirmation of human potential. Humans had survived, thrived, and inspired respect across the stars, not through arrogance or force, but through courage, adaptability, and steadfast principles. Princess Empress Lyra joined him, walking silently for a moment, then speaking softly. I doubted humans, I mocked you, but now I see we underestimated what your species can achieve. Perhaps the galaxy needs humans more than I realized. And sometimes, that is enough to inspire others to do the same. Elias had arrived as a human groom, mocked and underestimated, yet he left as a figure of respect, capable of bridging worlds and inspiring hope. And in the quiet of the court, amid the shimmer of crystals and starlight, one truth became clear. Humans, though small in number, carried a strength that could influence galaxies. Through courage, ingenuity, and integrity, they could face any challenge, even the mockery of a princess, and emerge triumphant. Elias had not only proven his worth to the court and the Princess Empress, but to the galaxy itself. Humanity had arrived, not as a curiosity, not as a joke, but as a force to be reckoned with. And in that moment, Captain Elias Reed understood something profound. The story of humans among the stars was only beginning.